John Wayne Gacy Jr. was born on March 17, 1942, in Chicago, Illinois, the second of three children to John Stanley Gacy, an auto repair machinist and World War I veteran, and Marion Elaine Robinson, a homemaker. To outsiders, the Gacys appeared a typical blue-collar family, yet behind closed doors, their home was a place of tension and fear. Gacy's father was an alcoholic and a violent man who belittled and beat his son for perceived failures, calling him sissy, mama's boy, and dumb. Gacy adored his mother and longed for his father's approval, which remained elusive. He was often sickly as a child, suffering blackouts and a heart condition that sidelined him from sports and further alienated him from his father's expectations of masculinity. Despite the harsh environment, Gacy tried to please those around him. As a child, he joined the Boy Scouts and served as an altar boy at church. Teachers described him as polite and eager to please, if somewhat reserved. But the seeds of darkness were already being sown. Gacy later claimed he suffered sexual abuse at the hands of a family friend when he was a child, though he kept the secret for decades. By his teenage years, Gacy struggled academically and socially, dropping out of high school before eventually earning a diploma. Craving respectability, he involved himself in political causes and community organizations. In 1962, he moved to Las Vegas and worked as a mortuary attendant. There, he had his first known encounter with death up close, claiming to have crawled into a coffin and caressed a dead male body, a moment he described as shocking yet strangely compelling. In 1964, Gacy returned to Chicago and married Marlon Myers, a co-worker from the Nunn Bush Shoe Company. The couple settled in Waterloo, Iowa, where Gacy managed 3 Kentucky Fried Chicken restaurants owned by his father-in-law. He joined the local Jaycees, a civic organization, and quickly became known as a dedicated volunteer and charismatic leader. But Gacy led a double life. In 1968, 2 teenage boys accused him of sexually assaulting them. One boy, Donald Voorhees, testified that Gacy had plied him with alcohol and coerced him into sexual acts. Gacy tried to intimidate the victim and even attempted to hire another young man to beat him into silence. Instead, the scheme unraveled and Gacy was arrested and convicted of sodomy, receiving a 10-year prison sentence. In prison, Gacy became a model inmate, supervising the prison kitchen and securing privileges for fellow prisoners. He even organized events and earned Inmate of the Month. His marriage disintegrated during his incarceration. By the time he was paroled in 1970, after serving only 18 months, his wife had divorced him and taken their 2 children. Returning to Chicago, Gacy sought a fresh start. He moved in with his mother and began a contracting business, PDM Contractors, specializing in painting, decorating, and maintenance. The business thrived, and Gacy began to accumulate wealth and respect. He bought a modest house at 8213 West Somerdale Avenue in Norwood Park, a quiet neighborhood that would become infamous. Determined to restore his social standing, Gacy plunged into local politics, joining the Norwood Park Township Street Lighting Committee, volunteering for the Democratic Party, and even posing for photos with First Lady Rosalind Carter during her 1978 Chicago visit. He cultivated a persona as a community-minded businessman, always eager to help neighbors or host elaborate summer barbecues. But behind the charm, Gacy harbored monstrous impulses. He created the persona Pogo the Clown, performing at children's hospitals, fundraisers, and birthday parties. In his red and white clown suit, with painted face and exaggerated smile, Gacy delighted crowds. Yet clowns have always walked a thin line between whimsy and terror, and for Gacy, Pogo became the mask behind which he hid his darkest desires. During the 1970s, Gacy began luring young men and teenage boys to his house, offering them work with his construction company, promises of quick cash, or simply a place to hang out and drink. Once inside, Gacy would engage in what he called the handcuff trick. Pretending it was a harmless clown routine, he'd handcuff his victim, then reveal the key was gone. He'd proceed to beat, rape, torture, and eventually strangle or asphyxiate the captive. After the killings, Gacy typically concealed the bodies in the crawlspace beneath his home. In some cases, he buried remains in his yard or dumped them in the nearby Des Plaines River. Over time, the stench of decay in the house became so intense that friends and contractors complained. Gacy blamed sewer problems or rodents. Few pressed further, because who would suspect the local funny man and community volunteer of mass murder? Between 1972 and 1978, Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and teenage boys, though the true number may be higher. His victims ranged in age from 14 to their early 20s. Many were vulnerable: runaways, drifters, or boys estranged from their families. Some knew Gacy through his contracting business, others he picked up from bus stations, streets, or bars. In December 1978, Gacy's carefully maintained facade began to unravel. On December 11, 15-year-old Robert Pius disappeared from a pharmacy in Des Plaines, where he worked part-time. He had told his mother he was going to meet a man about a potential construction job. The man was John Wayne Gacy. When police questioned Gacy, he was outwardly cooperative but evasive. Detectives quickly discovered his prior sodomy conviction. As suspicions grew, they obtained a search warrant for his house. Officers found suspicious items: driver's licenses of missing young men, clothing too small for Gacy, a class ring engraved with initials not his own, handcuffs, pornography, and a strong odor of decay wafting up from the floor vents. Police surveillance of Gacy intensified. Under pressure, Gacy began to unravel psychologically. He drank heavily and confessed pieces of his crimes to friends and surveillance officers, hinting that he was responsible for a lot of dead bodies. On December 21, 1978, Gacy finally confessed in detail. In chilling admissions, he described how he'd lured boys to his home, raped and them, then killed them. He directed police to the crawl space beneath his house where many of the bodies were buried. Authorities began excavating Gacy's property. The scene was horrific. Investigators crawled beneath the house in muddy, putrid conditions, uncovering skeletal remains entangled in plastic sheets or clothing. One by one, bones and skulls emerged from the soil. Neighbors watched in disbelief as body after body was carried out in evidence bags. The excavation yielded 29 bodies. 4 others were later recovered from the Des Plaines River. Many victims could not be identified for years, and several remain unidentified even today. Gacy was charged with 33 counts of murder. During his trial, which began on February 6, 1980, the prosecution presented overwhelming evidence, including items belonging to victims, photos, and Gacy's own confession. His defense argued insanity, portraying Gacy as a man gripped by multiple personalities, including Pogo the Clown. Prosecutors countered that Gacy clearly understood his actions were wrong, as he took deliberate steps to conceal the murders. Jurors deliberated less than 2 hours before finding Gacy guilty of all 33 murders. He was sentenced to death on March 13, 1980. He would remain on Illinois' death row for 14 years, becoming one of America's most notorious serial killers. Gacy's demeanor remained cold and remorseless. In interviews, he deflected blame, claimed police framed him, or minimized his crimes. He insisted he was the 34th victim, a man scapegoated by society. On May 9, 1994, John Wayne Gacy was executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center in Illinois. His last meal consisted of fried chicken, fried shrimp, French fries, strawberries, and a Diet Coke. His final words reportedly were, "Kiss my ass." Outside the prison, a crowd gathered, some carrying signs that read, "No tears for the clown." When news of his death was announced, cheers and applause erupted. Gacy's crimes left an enduring scar on the American psyche. He shattered the illusion that predators were strangers lurking in the shadows. Instead, he was a neighbor, a community volunteer, a clown at children's parties. He embodied a chilling lesson that monsters often wear the friendliest faces. In the decades since Gacy's execution, true crime enthusiasts, criminologists, and law enforcement have studied his case, seeking to understand how a man could maintain 2 such radically different lives. His story has appeared in countless documentaries, books, and television specials, ensuring that the name John Wayne Gacy remains synonymous with evil. Yet for many, the most haunting legacy of Gacy's crimes lies in the victims whose names and lives were stolen. Boys like Robert Peist, William Kindred, John Butkovich, and dozens of others, each with dreams, families, and futures reduced to bones beneath floorboards. The crawl space of 8213 West Somerdale became a symbol of hidden horrors, a reminder that beneath the surface of ordinary life can lurk unspeakable darkness. John Wayne Gacy's tale remains one of the most horrifying chapters in criminal history. He was a man who could shake hands with politicians one day and strangle a young man the next. He wore a painted smile as Pogo the Clown while plotting unimaginable acts of violence. In the end, Gacy stands as a stark warning. Evil does not always announce itself. Sometimes it hides behind a clown's mask and lives right next door.